Progress.
Hello?
Yo.
Hi. Portia.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Did you talk to anybody else, Mike?
No, I just saw whoever's in the group. I know Kristen can't make it or Brandon, so. Let's see.
I know I can't. One of my bulbs is out. Sorry, Portia. It's so dark on the porch.
I can still see you.
Yes. Especially if I smile. Isis is super sick, so she's been having seizures and stuff since I came home, and
Oh no.
yeah.
How old is she?
Between 13 and 15. I adopted her when she was like 3 or 5, and
Oh.
yeah, it's been rough.
God, she was doing so well when I saw her too.
Seriously, she was like, actually, she's like a 19-pound queen.
Yeah, that's what happens though. It's like one day their kidneys and liver just stop working.
Yeah, she's not doing good. So anyway, she's over here to the right of me. So if I go video out for a minute, I'm still here.
Okay.
How about counting in all the languages today?
Well, that was good. I like that. I think they liked it too.
Yeah, because they could all show off a little bit.
Especially Gertie.
Yeah, but it was cute when Mr. Gibson like just whispered over to me 1 through 20 in Italian.
Yeah.
But like, not the group concept. So cute.
Yeah. I'm glad to see that his wife comes with him.
She's always come since the beginning, other than that weird spell of her not feeling well. So
yeah, so that's good because she really enjoys it too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you could tell.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll get started anyway. As always, this will be being recorded, so Does anybody know Rich Wilkerson Jr.? Ring a bell, that name?
Yes. Who is that?
So Rich is a pastor in Miami for Vu's Church. Just another guy I spent a lot of time with. Him and Chad were kind of grew up at the same time, good friends. But anyway, I listen to his stuff every once in a while too, just to get some other stuff. And Judah Smith's another one, and Louis Caligo down in Atlanta. But he had a pretty good message last week about what we're going to talk about today. But I'll share some of the stuff he said here at the end. For the real raw and flawed stuff, we're going to do like a series on things that don't define you, and we'll just go through all of them every week. So I wanted to touch on the background one today, and what your background means for your life. Some of the questions I wrote are, what are some of the crutches that we build throughout our lives that we derive from our upbringing. So stuff that we not necessarily consciously, or sometimes consciously, we build these crutches for ourselves throughout our life from just what we witness or our upbringing with our families, what we're going through, what we hear, what we see, witness, the whole nine. So what are some of those things that we create through our childhood into adulthood? What was I not exposed to that could have helped me navigate through this world? And the same thing is what are the things I was exposed to that may have helped me and or crippled me? So that one's both questions. Some of the stuff we were lacking in, or some of the stuff that we had that helped us or may have hurt us. And then how much of your background should even matter in your life? Talking about breaking the chain from your past. In that sense, how much of it really matters? So I wanted to share a couple of things because Amber and I come from a divorced family. So I just want to share some stats. Now, before I go through these are just like a few of them, but this is not in any way of my belief. These are statistics done by third parties in medical field. So I just want to read some to give you an idea of where we're going with this message. So some of the stats on divorced children of divorced households. A lot of this stuff has to do with education and understanding your development in school. So the lack of being able to develop in school, developing behavioral issues early on in divorced household, twice as likely to drop out of high school, twice as likely to think or try to commit suicide, 4 times as likely to have social problems, 300% more likely to develop mental health issues in your lifetime, more likely to live in poverty. And then the last one, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's a study and it's talking about they're more likely to get major diseases because of what the stress brings to them. So it's not because they're more prone to disease. It's like if you had a really hard trauma in your life from a divorced family and you started drinking heavily and smoking early on and doing those things. So it's like a third step one. I don't really love that one. But I didn't share those to be on the negative side of things because I've lived my life in the camp of, no excuses really. Like it doesn't matter. It's like you work harder, you just work and get stuff done. And I'm not just talking about like career work. I just mean if something bad happens, you get through it, you get over it, you keep going. You don't let it stop your world. You don't use excuses as a pass. That's what I've always been like beating in my head. I haven't heard it really anywhere. I never heard that from my mother or my father. I never heard like an idea of how you do things at some point I developed that as my way out, like how I'm going to deal with what I'm dealing with, how I'm going to get out of it. I'm not going to put excuses in front of me. I'm not going to allow them to be a pass for me. I'm not going to let my upbringing or my background or my past or what I felt sorry for stop me from doing anything that I wanted to do in this lifetime. But saying that, I've never been aware of these stats in my life. I've never looked them up. I've never given them credit for things to dictate my life's path. I've never been that mindset. I'm still not. I won't look up these stats and be like, oh no, that's coming soon. Because my parents were divorced. Like, oh, I haven't felt that yet, but it's coming because it's a stat. I don't believe in that crap. I mean, stats are what they are. There's just statistics. I mean, what's gathered from a group of the past. But everything we talk about is moving towards the future, is moving away from and breaking change and creating new growth, and we aren't our past. So, but the one thing I will say through my growth journey is the question about the lack of things. I remember like mom being this amazing support, right? Like in the way of like an example or a model human being. Like look at her and be like, nobody ever looked at mom and was like, oh my God, she's not fucking amazing. Like nobody, everybody we've ever met has met mom has been like, oh my God, she's the best human being ever. And I 100% agree with that. But that didn't make her the best teacher because she was a good person. She was still going through life trying to figure stuff out, right? So it wasn't like she was, at least for me, and my experience slightly different, but for me, it wasn't like I was learning life skills. I wasn't learning emotional resiliency. I wasn't learning emotional intelligence. Definitely didn't talk about relationships or what you could do, or you'd be a good father someday, or any of those things were never in my life. I just witnessed a really good woman my whole life. I just witnessed that. But I didn't learn a lot of these skills, and definitely not from my father. I mean, my father tried to play a friend role more than he played teaching anything role. But I think as an adult, what I've learned is I made up my own rules. I made up my own skills and mechanisms and tools to get through the life that I was dealing with. And right or wrong, they got me to a certain point I'm proud of. But man, I skipped over a lot of shit that I could have just stopped and dealt with and been in a better mental space today if I would have. And the funny part is that I actually study this stuff. So I actually know all about it. But where I'm trying to get at is sometimes subconsciously, our life is being steered by our past. Sometimes you don't know what has a hold of you because you've never faced it. Sometimes you don't know what is controlling your path. Sometimes you feel like you're in control and you're not. So I want to share a little bit of stuff about just how the brain works to give you some ideas. So, when we do the study stuff on the science side, when we map the brain, it files memories, events, tragedies, trauma, and it prioritizes these things in level of importance for you, for me, differently on how much importance we gave to them at the moment. Now, the science tells us that when they happen, we have to give attention to them right away, meaning we have to deal with them properly and efficiently in the moments. Because if we don't, they get filed back in our storage system in our brain. And then at any time, it could be a smell, it could be a word another man says to you that brings that up, racing to the front part of your brain. And it shows up in ways that you cannot control. It shows up in ways of an anxiety attack. It shows up in ways of your fight or flight system going crazy. It shows up in ways of anger. There's a bunch of stuff that happens that's almost uncontrollable because you've not dealt with this thing and you did not know it's coming. It comes unknowingly and uncontrollably. That's how the brain works. It'll be triggered and you won't even know it. And now stuff comes rushing forward. It's that, if you've ever had that gray spell where you feel like you kind of blacked out in a moment, or you got so upset, or you feel like you were kind of out of your body and you weren't really doing that, that's what that is. That's that adrenaline coming forward, it's that memory coming forward, it's a trauma being reenacted because your brain doesn't know that it's not happening again. So in sharing that, I'm going to tell you, so it's what we call it. So the amygdala hijack. So during extreme stress, the fear response takes total control of the body and becomes paralyzed to its own emotion. Parts of the brain that use logic, reason shut down completely and no signals can reach them. So that comes in order of unwarranted rage, anger, frozen with fear, unable to move, unable to do anything, want to do anything. This is actually happening in your system. So emotions are closely hooked to your nervous system, very closely hooked to your nervous system. So when you're emotionally hijacked, your nervous system goes into fight or flight. Your body is almost uncontrollable. So what does that mean? It seems like, are we out of control? Can we control it? Is it something that we can get out of? And the answer is yes. What I just explained about when a moment comes up, if a tragedy happens, a breakup, a death in the family, it doesn't have to be anything serious. So you can lose your job. That was really important to you. Amber's going, the cat. I mean, like it could be anything that's emotionally huge to you. It doesn't have to be on a map of a list of things that everybody fears. It has to be as serious as death, but it could be you're working on a project for school and your computer crashed and you lost all your work. Anything that's super important to you, it can hijack the amygdala. So it can take over the control of your body. So it can prevent us from taking on new challenges in the future or even growing. Because then the fear starts to build a base, if you don't think it. And then what will happen is next time we go towards something that's near that, we're afraid to do it. Or we don't want to take class, or I don't want to go to connect group. I don't want to talk about growth. It starts to make decisions for you almost. Your body starts to make decisions for you out of protection. That's what the body does. The brain will always protect you out of fear. That's what fear is actually a good thing. We use it as a negative connotation, but fear is a very important part of our system. It's needed. It protects us from doing dumb stuff that will put us in harm's way or put us in danger. So what we want to do is there's also amygdala training. You can actually put yourself in more high stress situations and to train yourself for that emotion to not overtake. That makes sense. So instead of it rushing through your body and overtaking you where you have no control, you can start to feel the stress inhibitors and start to train yourself to be in higher stress levels over and over. Where you get to the point where you see firemen, for example, that can run into a fire that's sheer death, that's maybe other people are dying, that can keep their composure and keep those things at bay. It's because it's a trained system. There are some people that are literally develop at a really young age because they've gone through so much trauma that they don't have it anymore. It doesn't come rushing in. Your hair doesn't stick up. You don't get goosebumps. You don't get scared. That's where you'll see the adrenaline junkies and always trying to get something triggered in the body to feel something. And that happens too. So I think the most important part about the message tonight is that one, it's in our control. It's an uncontrollable thing that happens to us. But if we're preventative and not chasing, like I've done my whole life, like most people do, it's usually not an issue till it is, and we don't want to seek help until it's too late sometimes. We don't want to seek help until a lot of damage is done already, and you have to put a lot of work in to go backwards. But it's actually pretty easy to be preventative about it. It's taking the emotional stresses that come in our life that will continue to come. We're never going to be away from. It's always going to happen. You're going to turn around and something to somebody you care about is going to happen, or you, and you'll have to go through this. It's about how you go through it and what tools you use. So building the tools around you to, one, take on the stress and the emotional connection with things, like head on in the moment. I spoke to Alicia a little earlier about a similar thing, but I'm a person my whole life that I've worked through tragedy. I've forced myself to tell myself things like, oh, well, if my mom died, she wouldn't want me to stop doing what I was doing. That's probably bullshit. She wouldn't want me to stop my life, but she also wouldn't me not want to be in that emotion, that feeling either. So it's the things we tell ourselves that try to get us through, sometimes hijack our growth, sometimes hijack us for years to come. And those are the hardest things. So fear is a very powerful protective response. It's a response to threats in our life. So it's going to come. It's how we control it. What I wanted to share with you on Rich was, I thought this was a really good connection to what we were talking about. Was he talked about he was talking about a message about, like, the self-help books in Barnes and Nobles. It's massive. It gets bigger every year. There's so many books on self-help. And he talks about how there's always a list. You can read all of them, but every it comes down to, there's always a list. You do these 23 things and you'll be happy. You do these 14 things and you'll be happy. There's 8 keys to happiness. And God does forget all that list. He's like, the only thing I ask for you is to come to me and I'll take care of the rest. He says, come to me and I'll give you rest. He's got the rest. So I don't believe that there is a book. I don't think there is a guide to happiness. I think the raw roller coaster of emotion of happiness and sadness is needed in your life. To obtain happiness as the goal can leave you pretty sad, because that's not what life is. It's all of it. It's feeling all the emotion all the time. It's feeling happiness at the highest. It's feeling your lows at the lowest, but managing both of them. Overexcitement in our sports world is too much. We have to train people to get not excited. Kind of doesn't make sense, but when somebody gets overly excited in the golf course and is playing a tournament and they eagle a hole and birdie a hole and they're doing good, same thing, their emotion can take over and they can make an error. So too much excitement, too much sadness. There's this balance of chemicals that are in our body too. So I think we have to be hyper aware of our background, where we come from, what actually defines us from it. And then more importantly, what I've been learning today is, I'm not a parent, but I don't think it's just that. I don't think it's the example you set for anybody around you, the other adult friends you have, any kids that are around you that look up towards you in your life. It's you don't have to just be a parent to set the example or teach things or provide your past experiences to help their future. Most of the kids there are smarter than we'll ever be. And they learn more than we do. That's how the brain works. They take so much in at a young age, good and bad. So, if I'm going to take anything away from this message, I'm going to take away that I want to instill things that I learned, that I had to spend years of self-education and time to learn, that I felt like I never learned growing up, from my parents, from teachers, from anybody. But it took me a lifetime to do it. So I think just helping the curve with anybody you can at any time, being aware, having empathy towards everybody's situation. Everybody grew up differently. Divorce isn't better than parents staying together fighting. Having everything you ever wanted isn't better than having nothing. I don't believe any of that shit. I think they're all excuses by the opposite person. You know, you hear a lot of people with nothing say that rich people had it good. You hear a lot of people, rich people say poor people make excuses. Like everybody has a direction to point in. But it's only the person that has to go through what they went through. That's the only thing that's important. So that's my rant for today. I think I want to touch on all the points. I wrote pages and pages. I want to touch on all the points in the graphic that I sent out on Instagram, and stay on this topic of things that, you know, that don't define us in growth for the next couple of weeks. I don't think we're doing Zoe next week anyway, so we'll do this one again. Zoe won't pick up, I think, for the following. So is that 3 weeks? Yeah, something like that. Their collaboration thing is tomorrow to end the season 2 in person, and then I think they take 2 weeks off, and then we're back on. But we'll continue to do this every Monday. So, you know, we never stop doing this. You know, appreciate you guys showing up. Anybody have anything they want to share? I know I talk most of the time this time, but I had a lot to say.
I had a couple of tier just thoughts on what you were saying as you were saying it. You know, one, definitely fear protects us and sometimes shelters us and things, but like in the motorcycle accident, for whatever reason, I mean, I have zero recollection of that happening, even though like I was conscious and like, you know, I was having just a normal day like we are right now. And I must have saw or felt an impact or watched myself fly through the sky or land on the ground or whatever, until I was actually hurt enough to where the shock came in. But for whatever reason, that's just completely gone from my memory in every way, shape, and form.
You've been on a motorcycle
What's that?
since? We've been on a motorcycle since?
Yeah. Yep. And four wheelers and stuff. Yeah.
No,
Took
but
me a little bit.
you've been on a motorcycle?
Yeah, I've been on a motorcycle. Yep. In Hawaii, I had a couple small ones and a couple other situations. Yeah. Been a passenger.
And how long did that take?
I mean, quite a few years to get it out of my mind as far as, you know, should I put myself in that position to be at risk or whatnot. Wasn't so much, yeah, I don't know what, like you said, that was a deeper fear, but also to your point about, you know, the things that nobody teaches us or, you know, didn't know to teach us because they were growing up themselves or whatnot. We don't know till we're adults that like our parents are like growing up right in front of our eyes too. We just assume because they're adults, they're supposed to have it all together or something and they owe us the world. But when I went to massage school in like 97, 98, and I had graduated in 93, you know, I was kind of like in my mid 20s and I was trying to figure all those things out, the self-defining things you were talking about, like who am I, what's important, what kind of person do I want to be, who do I emulate, whatever it is. And until I went to massage school, like I had zero language for everything I felt my entire life. You know, that was a time that I got to recognize in myself, like what are core values? What I didn't even know what that term meant. Core values like love, integrity, honesty, kindness, whatever. Not to mention like holding space for other people. I didn't know that was a thing. You know, I was so busy trying to survive in that fight or flight mode. And then, you know, the thing that David Tulin at Fellowship Farm that I wrote about, how he dismissed me and I was trying to help him for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then even when he was dismissing me, I realized that he had some kind of eczema or something on his hands. And while he was dismissing me and being rude to me, I literally was like, oh, I make a salve for that. And he like nailed me to the wall and was like, hyper surveillance is something that's a superpower in children when they're hiding their brother under the crib, or they don't know if the heat's going to be on, or if they're going to get beat, or if there's going to be food on the table, or if mom's going to be on drugs, or all kinds of things that all different walks of life might be dealing with at any moment that left them in fight or flight as children, and in that fear trigger mode of, you know, all that you're talking about. And he said, and then we grow up with whatever skills we may or may not have attained from that situation. But now we have this superpower where we can notice every single thing in the room, and we can anticipate things. And like you said, like as a firefighter, as an example, like someone who can go in and is tempered to fear and not fear what the average person would fear to run into that building to save someone. You know, and he said, we grow up and nothing's chasing us. There's not a lion chasing us anymore. There's no emergency. We have food, we usually have a normal job. And then there we are being triggered every single day by small things now. Somebody's horn, loud pipes on a car, extra long nose hair, like the stupidest things set us off, and we like fly into this rage, or are triggered into this depression hole or whatever it is by the tiny things that aren't even a threat. But because, to your point, we were trained to think so. And yeah, for me, I've had to just really put into practice everything I know conceptually, because yeah, we can science our way through it, and knowledge is power. And I like to read as much as I can and understand as much as I can how it's working on a chemical level. But some of it, you just have to feel your way through. Like I was trying to hide from darkness for so long in my life that I was afraid of what was on the other side of it. And what was on the other side of it was actually peace. But I thought what was going to be on the other side of it was going to tear me into a million shreds, you know, for 30 years probably in my life. So I like all the topics tonight. It's going to be interesting to
Yeah, I think
continue.
I think you gotta be able to know when to set things down and not let it affect your future. It's one thing to manage it well through skills and face it and be okay with it and let it set down. But even if you didn't have that luxury of knowing, you still gotta fight to let down the past so it doesn't affect the future so deeply. And that's what sometimes sneaks up on you. I mean, if you did what I did for my whole life, tried to impress somebody that wasn't impressible, uh, which is me, you know, I thought I was doing it for something else, but I was trying to earn some kind of respect for myself that was impossible because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what enough was. I didn't know what success was. I didn't know what happiness was. I didn't know like a pat in the back was. Like I didn't know even what the fuck my standard was. So I just kept going harder, harder, harder. Like it's gonna come at some point. And I think the true skill is knowing when to let down your background, your past, because it is behind you. It can never be brought back up. You can't go back to it. You can't change it. You can't move it. You can't manipulate it. It's over and done. But because of the way our brain works, again, you have to deal with it to have it be over and done efficiently, like a nice filing cabinet, not a messy Einstein room. So if we can start to have a short-term memory loss when it comes to things that weren't our doing, right? Like it wasn't my fault that mom and dad weren't ready, or they were just young adults like I am trying to manage their life. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't their fault, but it definitely wasn't my fault that I didn't learn something from them that they didn't know. And I can't hang on to something like that and use it facing this way forward in my future and go, well, you know, that's why I struggle in relationships, because I didn't have that. Oh, that's starting to sound like an excuse again. And it's giving me an out to not face it, learn something new, grow from it, and be slightly better than the people that taught me. You know, if I'm ever gonna be a dad one day, it starts with me just being better than my dad, and then better than me yesterday.
But so the big key to everything you're saying is that, like you said, God says in the Bible, give it to him and he'll do the rest. And or just in a quantum world where God is the universe or science is God or whatever it is, we can make those quantum leaps, and it can be as instant as giving it to God or truly deciding. It really can start to change tomorrow. It's not to say that there's not going to be, like you said, highs and lows and happy and sadness, and that those things have to exist. We don't want every day a barren desert. We want a rainstorm on occasion, a hailstorm, a snowstorm every once in a while. We don't want it to stick around, but we wouldn't want the same perfect day every single day. And that's the same with our emotions. However, everything we talk about, whether it's science or all the feels or whether it's God, it's practice. And if you truly want any change in your life, no matter what it is, for any of us, all of us, we have to just do that every single day, because the way our brain, our infinite universe of a brain is, and you teach this all the time, is creating a new nerve or a new neural path, a new highway that will start to have least resistance, so that we're not constantly going back to that place of why it wasn't good enough or wanting to justify or wanting to make an excuse. We're still going to want to do that. We'll still be triggered always to do it, but it'll become a way easier choice every time to go, and I'm going to do this now instead. I'm going to spin class, or I'm going to yoga, or I'm going for the run, or I'm going to the gym, or whatever the new practice is. And if it means being a better person or being sober or parenting or being a better friend or whatever it is to any of us, we have to just actively practice it even when we don't want to. I mean, and then it becomes easier, I think. But it's all the practice. It's all a choice. It can all be instant, but that it has to be instant again. They say every new moment, every new now. That's like every new moment, every new now. 3 minutes from now, I can be better. And 3 minutes from now, I can be better. And 3 minutes from now, I can be better. But I have to keep choosing it over and over and over and over and over.
Amber, can I interject for a minute?
Yeah, please.
So I love how you say practice, because I think for me, that's the biggest downfall I have is I think I'm stuck in an old routine, and your brother and I spoke earlier about
It's safety.
yeah, like you and I read something a long time ago that said like your traits that you have from, what did you say, like 11 or 12 years old, or what the traits you'll have for the rest of your life. Is that correct? So I feel like unless we continue to practice to change our ways, right? So that's a good thing that you keep saying and repeating, because this isn't the first podcast I've heard you say that, practicing. The more that we all practice to be happy or to focus or to create new goals or whatever it is that we want, practice to be happy or to change our ways, maybe that's like a new start for everyone, So like your brother said to me earlier, one of my big downfalls in life is I feel like I need acknowledgement. And maybe that's something from when I was a kid, no one ever patted me on the back or whatever. So now, even to you or to your brother or to Ryan or anyone, when I get home every day, I have to give a checklist of everything that I did every day. And no one cares. Like I'm the only one that cares.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But your brother brought that up to me today. Like you list off all the things that you did every day. And it's like, everyone will love you, even if you didn't do any of those things. You know what I mean? So as I'm listening to you guys talk, I think like, that's what I'm going to start doing. I'm going to write it on my dry erase board when we hang up from this Zoom, and I'm going to write practice in big letters, because I feel like that's just like something that I'm going to start to think about every day. If I'm having a rough time, or if I'm feeling down about one of you guys struggling or whatever, like maybe that's just something. If you're in like a roller coaster, or if you're having a low that day, you know what I mean? If you just remember to practice to do something better or to, you know, get back on track, if you will, you know?
Yeah.
Am I making any sense?
Yeah.
Portia and I, real quick, and I know I can see the time clicking out. I'll say it really quick, but Portia and I had a really beautiful conversation the other day up here, and it was about exactly this. It's so weird that you chose this for this week, but essentially I said to her, you know, I was so mad at my parents for so long because I thought had they really had me in mind, I would be running the United Nations and a classical pianist or Alicia Keys, because like that's what the world owed me if I'm going to be born, right? And she laughed at me, of course, because, you know, that's ridiculous. But the best thing that anyone ever said in response to that, because that was part of my narrative, I said it all the time. Somebody goes, okay, well, that was good when you were a kid that they failed you, but why aren't you doing it for yourself now then? Like, you still could be those things, but I'm not doing that for me. So why did I expect them to? That's all I have to say about, like, you know, what didn't they do? Well, I don't know. I could be in the United Nations if I practiced.
But your
Or-
brother did say that,
Yeah.
like, whether it's about your parents, our parents, Portia's parents, anyone's parents in particular, or teachers or anybody, it is a little odd that they never said, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or would you guys like to have kids or anything? Because I know that wholeheartedly, my parents never gave me